But that's not the only part of the benefit, because we don't actually care as a firm about units of output. We care about revenues. So the benefit of a worker is not just how many units it produces, but the value of those units. Okay? And what is the value of the next unit produced? It's the marginal revenue. So the value of the next unit of labor is what we call the marginal revenue product, MRP sub L. The marginal revenue product is the marginal product of labor times marginal revenue. That's the benefit of another unit of labor. It's not just what they make, but what it's worth. Okay, it's not just what they make, but what it's worth. Okay? So that's the marginal benefit. The value of another unit of labor is it makes a marginal revenue product amount more stuff, and you sell that at the marginal revenue. That's the marginal benefit. What's the marginal cost of another unit of labor? This is the marginal benefit of another unit of labor. What's the marginal cost? Well, the marginal cost of another unit of labor is just the wage. So we simply set this equal to the wage. We set the marginal revenue product of labor equal to the wage, and that gives us our optimization condition for the optimal amount of labor the firms want to demand, is to set the marginal revenue product of labor equal to the wage. Marginal benefits of hiring another unit of labor equals the marginal cost of hiring another unit of labor. Now, to go further, remember, I said this is a perfectly competitive output market. So what is the marginal revenue in a perfectly competitive output market? What's the marginal revenue of a firm producing? Yeah, price. So you can write this more to say that we want to set the marginal product of labor times the price equal to the wage. Okay? So basically, what we're saying here, think about it, is hire workers until the cost of the next unit of labor is the same as what that unit will actually produce for you. Okay? The next unit of labor costs you W. It produces for you MPL times P. So you want to hire workers until that condition is met. Okay? So think about that. Figure 15.1 sort of shows this. Okay? We have a supply of labor in 15.1 that's horizontal, because we're assuming a competitive market for workers. Okay? We're assuming a competitive market for workers. That is, a perfectly competitive market. So if I try to pay workers 1 penny more than other firms, every worker in the world will want to work for me. If I pay workers 1 penny less than other firms, no workers will want to work for me. That's what a perfectly competitive labor market means. That literally, I am a price taker in the input market. I don't get to set the wage. Okay? I don't get to set the wage. The wage is given to me by the labor market. So just like a perfectly competitive firm doesn't get to set the price of their product, it's given to them by the competitive market. A perfectly competitive firm in the input market doesn't get to set the wage they pay. It's given to them through the kind of process that delivered us our prices on the output side. Okay? So we get a horizontal labor supply curve. And then we have this downward sloping labor demand curve. Why is it downward sloping? Someone raise their hand and tell me. Why is the labor demand curve downward sloping? Yeah?
Marginal product of labor is diminishing.
Exactly. The diminishing marginal product of labor means you have a downward sloping marginal benefit of labor. Each additional, remember, holding capital fixed is only one shovel. So each additional worker adds less and less to digging that hole. Okay? So marginal product's diminishing. Since P is a constant, that doesn't really affect the slope. I mean, it affects the slope, it doesn't really affect the sign. It doesn't affect the sign. It's diminishing because the marginal product of labor is diminishing. So the equilibrium is where they intersect. So the bottom line, this is complicated and new. The bottom line intuition is to think about, as I decide whether to hire one more hour of work, you've got a firm. You've got to decide, do I want the worker to work one more hour? You do the trade-off of what am I going to pay them for an hour versus what are they going to get me for an hour. What they're going to get me is their marginal product times the price. Okay? Now, so in other words, the reason it's not just a marginal product is imagine if two workers are equally productive. With one more hour of work, they each make 3 more units. But let's say In one case, a unit is a computer chip, okay? In another case, a unit is a potato chip. It's more delicious than computer chips because they sell for a higher price. So therefore, you'd want to pay more to the worker who produces more units of a more valuable good. So let's think about a sports example, okay? And I realize we're all about baseball today, as we should be. Go Red Sox. But let's focus on basketball for a minute, okay? Now imagine you're an owner of a team in the NBA, the National Basketball Association, and you're trying to decide how much to pay one of your players. So basically, in that case, your goal is what your goal is wins. That's the goal. That's the profit you're trying to maximize is your wins. Let's say you're probably trying to maximize your revenues from ads and stuff, but assume that's proportional to wins. Okay, assume the basis, the more you win, the more money you make. So let's say the thing you're trying to maximize is wins. Okay? So your labor demand, the marginal product you care about, is the contribution of the next player to your win total. That's what you care about. The marginal product of labor is how much does that next player add to my win total.